What is Shaken Bacons? This is podcast / Wardencast number 2, and we're going to talk about Mass Effect today, especially because we had a release of Mass Effect Legendary recently, the remastered Mass Effect, which was awesome. First of all, thanks so much for the positive reception to the first kind of Wardencast video. I really appreciate how nice all of you are and how understanding you are. And I'm really glad that at least with this kind of in-between content, it's something that hopefully will be just sort of quietly enjoyable for everyone. At least I hope so. I have plugged in a different microphone than last time. Sorry about the audio. I hadn't realized that the Bluetooth plus the recording was creating that weird snap, crackle, and pop effect. So hopefully having a dedicated plugged-in microphone this time will take care of that issue. At least that's my hope. So I wanted to talk about Mass Effect because I've mentioned in a couple of videos in the past, years ago at this point, that Mass Effect is one of my top 5 video games of all time. And it's also one that I think I've replayed, oh my gosh, I don't know how many times I've replayed Mass Effect. Quite a lot of times. And so when they were releasing Legendary, I was pumped. I was beyond thrilled. I was like, yes. I don't normally buy video games as soon as they come out, but Legendary I pre-ordered and immediately played. I was very excited, and I was thinking it was a good in-between for waiting for the next Mass Effect game, which I had been genuinely terrified that Andromeda had done so poorly that it had just killed the franchise. And I was so excited that they are going to be continuing it. Hopefully it's just not a train wreck the way Andromeda was at first, and in some respects still is. But I got Legendary. I think that it was amazing. So how was it, first of all, if you've been wondering, hey, I have Mass Effect, or I like Mass Effect, or maybe you've never played Mass Effect and you've heard that it's a great game, and you're like, maybe it used to be too outdated in terms of graphics and controls for you, and you're like, I don't really want to play such an older game. Because I hear that. There are some older games that I think are almost unplayable at this point. I don't think Mass Effect was one of them, but the reboot with the graphics update and the Windows compatibility updates and the controls that have been standardized throughout the games has really, really brought it back to life and enhanced the playability. So if you have never played Mass Effect and you've always wanted to, I would say the Legendary Edition is definitely worth picking up. And if you're a longtime Mass Effect fan, I think the Legendary Edition is still worth picking up, quite honestly, because it comes with all of the DLC. It comes with, again, those standardized controls for combat throughout the games. One of my biggest issues whenever I used to play through Mass Effect in the past was the fact that the controls were slightly different from game to game. And it was always an adjusting period. I remember, like, the most jarring change for me was always when I entered Mass Effect 3, because that's when the controls shifted enough that I would keep trying to use old key maps from the first game or the second game, and then it would take me like a hot minute to figure out, oh, I need to reconfigure the way that my fingers are hitting the keyboard. So having the controls standardized was fantastic. I think that was a big plus with the new series, this updated series. And actually this playthrough was just fantastic. I loved reliving everything. I'm a super dork when it comes to Mass Effect. I actually get super emotional. And I get like I cry constantly through Mass Effect. Like, I'm just so proud of humanity. And I'm so proud of Shepard. I always play as Femme Shep because I like her voice acting much better than the male Shepard. And I think it's for me as a woman, I can just relate to that better, although I have no issue playing as male characters. I just prefer to play as female Shepard. So it was really fun reliving everything, and this was actually the first playthrough that I ever played with biotic and tech abilities, which sounds kind of crazy. I'm usually the kind of person that when I play an RPG, I play with magic if magic is available. And I would say the only exceptions to that in my entire history of gaming would be Skyrim, because no matter what I start off playing in Skyrim, even if my intentions are to use the magic system or if my intentions are to use the sword, I just end up being an archer. I think that's like the common thing that happens to everybody with Skyrim. So Skyrim's the one exception, and then the other exception used to be Mass Effect. Mass Effect I always approached as a pure soldier because I used to like the idea of Shepard just out of sheer power of will and gumption and a bunch of guns just taking on the Reapers. And I just really, really liked playing like that. But for the first time, I thought, you know what? I've played this so many times. I've always played the same way. I'm going to try playing as... oh, shoot. I don't remember which one I played as. It was one with a hybrid of tech and biotics. And it was really fun. I've never understood like the combos of the detonators or anything. And I finally started playing around with it. And I was like, this makes playing even more enjoyable. So it was kind of cool because I got to relive the series, but I also had a completely different combat experience, which was a fun way to re-experience this. And one thing that was really, really satisfying for me was finding out that the console cheat codes from the classic games still work. Because I know there are some purists out there that are like, you can't ever use console cheat codes, or, you know, that's not an honest way to play the game. But here's my perspective on that. I've already beaten the game, I don't know how many times, playing it the manual hard way. And at this point in my life, with the amount of time that I have to devote to gaming, replays for me are to enjoy the game. So I use console cheat codes because one thing that I forgot that I really did not like from the original games is how painful the planet explorations are. Like, the planet mining and the explorations are so bad. And I know some people like them, and I've seen people say, oh, they're relaxing. I'm sorry, I cannot get on board with that. It is so, so painful to me to play those sections. So I would just use the console cheat code, and I was like, you know what? Give me 100,000 element zero. I cannot be bothered to fire these mines or try and ration the fuel that my ship has. So I think I like explored enough of the planets to finally I got the achievement for the mostly explored, or whatever that reward is. I'm one of those people that gets really into achievements. So whenever I replay a game, I always try and make a goal to hit different achievements. I think I got like 80% of the achievements from this Legendary Edition. Might have been more. I was pretty pleased with what I was able to get for this first replay through of the re-release. But yeah, some things definitely have still not aged well, even with the port being fixed, which is like, again, the planet mining, the exploration, and the Nomad. Oh my god, I hate the Nomad so much. It has the most janky controls. And what was the other one that kind of hovered? The Hammerhead? Yeah, I'm not into those, man. I can't get on board with the vehicle missions. I think was it Mass Effect 3? One of the games has those missions where you're in the Hammerhead or whatever it is, and you have to kind of jump jet around, and then there's like Geth that you have to fight, and I just can't play those. For my playthrough this time, I thought, you know what? I've beat the game enough. I'm not doing this. I refuse to play any of those missions. So I actually willingly bailed on those achievements, which part of me kind of died inside because I'm such an achievement person. But I was like, I can't do this. But and if you've ever wanted to play these games, I would highly recommend the Legendary Edition. It's phenomenal. I really enjoyed, actually. I'm not big on skins or costume changes, but all the different actual looks that you can apply to your squad mates in this that I didn't know about are really fun. They're also hilariously bad in some cases. If you have not seen some of Thane's costumes, for example, they're hilarious. There's one where he looks like a bad Matrix cosplay with this like single visor, wraparound sunglasses. It's so bad. Oh my gosh, it's so bad and it's so funny. It's a riot. But you cannot beat the original Mass Effect for story. I still think it is one of the best scripted, best voice acted games in in history, in the history of video gaming. And that includes the terrible ending choices for Mass Effect 3, which I won't go into just in case somebody has not played these. But I still think it's worth playing, even though the ending is a little... saying it's a little controversial is maybe that's putting things mildly. I don't know. Maybe it's not just a little bit controversial, but I highly recommend it. It was fantastic. And I also heard some speculation that maybe part of the reason for the reboot was so that you could import a new compatible save file into the next game, which the cynical side of me, I tried to just say side and part at the same time, so it came out of sart. The cynical part of me / side of me is like, no, they're running out of ideas. They're trying to pull up the classics. They're just milking us for money. And guess what? It worked. I was one of those people. I was like, you know what? I'll plunk down the cash for this. I love this game series. And I'm one of those people that just replays the same games over and over. I finished replaying Mass Effect and my husband was like, oh, what's next? Gonna replay Dragon Age for like the 10th time? And I was like, no, I'm gonna replay Dishonored for like the 10th time. But, so I'm one of those people. I was like, I'm definitely gonna just chill out for this. But it would be interesting if part of the reason, one side benefit is that you can import a recent save file for the new game. So I think that's pretty neat if that's the case. Who knows if it is the case, but that would be cool if it was. And when I finished Mass Effect Legendary, I thought, I kind of want to give Andromeda another shot. And Andromeda is, I feel like, such a sensitive topic because it was bad, man. Andromeda was bad when it first came out. And when I first played Andromeda, I hated it at first. And then I would say I was trying to give it a really fair shot, and I knew so many people hated it. And I actually had held off on buying Andromeda until most of the major glitches and bugs were patched because I knew it was going to be a mess. So I waited for a while when I first bought it, and I still hated it. And then I realized the reason I hated it was because it was not Shepard. And you go through the entire Mass Effect games and you're just this ultimate badass soldier / fighter that is Shepard, and you're saving the galaxy from this amazingly enormous threat that comes from dark space. And it's hard to top that. It's hard to create a character that moves beyond what Shepard is. And I realized I hated the game because I was not playing Shepard. And also, I'm not a fan of the voice actors for either of the Ryder characters in that game. But once I realized I hated it because it wasn't Shepard, I tried to mentally set aside that part of how I was viewing it. And I found it pretty decent for a while, and then it evolved again into me thinking, holy cow, this game is repetitive and boring. And it has crappy villains. Just the storyline is not there. It just got very deja vu to me. It felt like every planet was the same. Every mission was the same. It just wasn't it for me. So I played it the one time. I thought, this was garbage, and I never played it again. But then I finished Legendary Edition, and I still had that Mass Effect kind of bug. And I thought, well, maybe I'll give Andromeda another shot. But I wanted to alter it and change it so that maybe it would be more palatable for me. So I installed a lot of mods that went a long way toward making this a more enjoyable game. So I installed different custom appearances. I used Alea mods all these mods are from Nexus mods. So I used Alea mods and all the accompanying like body tattoo mods and hair mods that came with that. There's an Iron Man mod that lets you fly with your jump jets, which was amazing. I installed that to avoid using the Nomad because, again, I really, really hate, it wasn't the Nomad. What did they call it in Andromeda? I don't remember. Either way, it's one of those dumb vehicles in video games that I just can't get behind. So I installed the Iron Man mod to avoid using the Andromeda version of the Nomad. And that was incredible. That really, really helped out. I also installed hypermobility and the expanded jump jet so I could jump further and control the character better. So instead of Ryder taking these weird stumbling steps when you go to turn directions, because the character just feels clumsy when you control it in that game. It's a little more streamlined, and the expanded jump jet jumps you much further. And you're more controlled, so you can't use the Iron Man mod at all times. Like if I'm just trying to get up onto a higher rock, the speed of the jets and the Iron Man mod is too much for that. So the jump jet increase helped a lot towards maneuverability and minimizing frustration that I had throughout the game previously. And it actually jumps you so high, and the graphics are good enough that it made me feel swoopy in my stomach. When I was falling, like I reached the apex of a jump and I'd be falling down. You know what I mean? Like when you're on a roller coaster and you get that kind of like whoop, that kind of swoopy feeling in your stomach. I would actually get that because of how well it was done. So that was a big help. And then I installed, let's see what else. More skill points per level, a profile rework so that they made more sense, and then no profile cooldown. And I didn't end up using a lot of those as much as I would think, but the skill points per level helped even out a lot of the weird disparities between the villains and the main character, because the leveling system was a little off balance in the main game. And then I think I also installed increased inventory space, so I wasn't constantly worrying about it. Tempest Superstore, so I didn't have to keep track of which stores offered what goods. And then I also installed better loot, so just instead of actually getting guns, I just got credits. And then I could spend what I wanted on the ingredients to use in the crafting system, which is garbage, by the way. The crafting, the user interface in Andromeda for all of the menus is trash. It takes so many clicks to do anything, and you finally click 50 times to get into a submenu, and then that submenu is just a never-ending list of items. It is garbage, and they have not fixed the bug where any quest you get permanently has a flag that you have new items in your journal. And for most people that may not matter. For me, I am just anal retentive enough that having that marker there constantly telling me that I had quests that I was unaware of was driving me insane, and I couldn't get rid of it. It drove me crazy. The last mod I think I installed was shorter cinematics, because there are way too many cinematics in Andromeda. Like, oh, you want to watch a 1.5 minute long sequence of the Tempest landing at the space station? No, I do not, game. No, I do not. So I installed those, and I also changed the way I played the game this time. I ignored all of the additional tasks because those just seemed like garbage fetch quests to me, so I ignored them all. And one thing I will say, there's a couple things that Andromeda does that are better than Mass Effect, the original trilogy. Nobody hurt me on this. There's a couple things they do better. One of them is the removal of the dichotomy of the pure Renegade and Paragon system. One thing I don't like about the original Mass Effect games is you either have to be like a goody two-shoes with the Paragon, or you have to be straight up an asshole, it feels like, as a Renegade. And I like that there are just different tones that you choose within Andromeda, because I felt like I could actually respond the way I would respond in real life and handle the scenarios the way I would in real life without having to worry about not having enough Paragon points or Renegade points to actually complete a critical action that may prevent one of my squad members from killing themselves. So that was something I really appreciated that they had updated within Andromeda. I think the combat on Andromeda is also fantastic. I don't like that the gun descriptions are not wonderful, and the crafting system is kind of a mess to understand at first. But the combat, adding in that verticality of the jump jets into the combat, makes the combat incredibly fun. With the exception of the fact that you get all of these amazing skill points and these profiles, and then you can only hotkey 3 skills to use at a time, which is absurd to me. It is a huge waste of potential, and I could not find a mod that got around that. So, like, I ended up having just about every skill that I possibly could, and I could only use 3 of them at once. And that was ridiculous because the combat was so good otherwise. So other than that, the combat was a lot better. I just wish that you had the ability to use more than 3 of your skills at once. And the menu for the combat was also horrible. Like if you wanted to change your skills, you had to set favorites through your profile, and you have to pause in the middle of combat, hit tab. No, what was it? You have to hit tab to bring up like the combat wheel, and then you have to hit like backspace or something to bring up your favorites. And then you have to use your WASD keys and then I think like the space bar to select a new profile with a new set of 3 skills. I don't remember exactly. It's just the whole user interface of this game is incredibly clunky, but the combat's very fun. And one thing that I will say that I did benefit from when I was forced to only use 3 skills at a time, I actually built different attack styles depending on the situation and the enemies I was facing. And I actually played like a combination at different times of melee, biotics, and then tech. And that was a really fun thing. It kind of felt like I played 3 different games almost, instead of having just like a core skill set that I just launched every single time I encountered some enemies. So that was a fun gameplay combat experience. So I ignored all those extra quests. I installed the mods that helped a lot. I tried out different combat styles. I did my best to ignore the voice acting of the main Sarah Ryder character because it's terrible in my opinion. And I also tried to ignore the horrible graphics on the Asaris. They butchered the Asaris in this game, dude. Like, they look so generic and terrible. It was bad, man. So I tried not to look at any of the Asari. And then I cleared the monoliths first on each planet, and then I took my time exploring the rest of the planet, and that actually helped a lot in terms of not feeling as though the planets were so repetitive. And I think it's just because I had cleared out the monoliths first. That just helped a lot. And yeah, so it was much more enjoyable than the first time I played, and I don't loathe it the way that I did before. It's still not, I mean, as games go, it's like a mediocre to good game. Like if we were rating the game on a scale almost like steak, where it was either well done or rare, it was probably like a medium. It wasn't great, but it's fine. I mean, it's better than a lot of other games. For what it's supposed to be, though, not great. You know, as a Mass Effect entry, woefully lacking. But as a standalone game by itself, I think it was decent. But I think the biggest issue with this game is that it was just a huge missed opportunity. Because this game, in premise and on paper, sounds fascinating. Like, you're going to a different galaxy. Like a completely different galaxy. There's so many things that you could do there. And that potential, I feel like, was just dropped. And these are complaints that if anybody listening to this, if you guys have followed Mass Effect and you saw the controversy that happened when Andromeda was first released, you'll know that part of some of the major complaints are, why couldn't we play as a non-human? Why are the new aliens in a completely different galaxy also bipedal? And they look very similar to humans. Like, was there no originality in this at all? And even their enemies from a different galaxy also just look like bipedal humans. They actually kind of look like monkeys to me. Like, what are those? They look like those little, like, is it a capuchin monkey? Kind of want to look this up now. Because the enemies, like the Archon and the, I don't know, whatever that. See, Andromeda is so forgettable, I can't even recall what the race of the enemy aliens were. Yeah, they look like capuchin monkeys. I don't remember what they're called. It's the Archon and whatever they are. So they look like capuchin monkeys. And it's just like, why you're in a different galaxy. You could have done so many things here. That was a huge dropped potential. And then I think one of the biggest pieces of dropped potential with this game was the truly interesting parts of the story were just like brushed to the side. Like, you set up with this dark matter weapon, which is what they call the Scourge. And it basically screws up everyone entering the universe everyone in the galaxy when they first get there. Like, it just literally scourges them, and it clearly devastated all the planets in that galaxy throughout the systems. It's a major deal. It's dark matter. It's crazy. There was a hyper advanced alien race that got wiped out by it. So clearly, the scourge is some form of dark matter that was created as a weapon. And they could have done so much with this. They could have played off the dark forest theory, as part of the Fermi paradox. They could have played off of something like, if the Reapers were hiding in dark space, maybe something was targeting anything that touched dark space or dark matter, and that's why it was weaponized. Or maybe something's trying to burst out of a different dimension, because there are different, dark space is in a different dimension of existence, at least, and that's the way I think of it with the Reapers. So maybe something has come out of a different dimension to attack, to preserve resources. But then it's like, not only was the scourge there, and it was this really interesting dark matter, ultimate dark forest energy possible storyline, but they never touched on it again. And they never touched on, like, the remnant, why the remnants were wiped out, what used the scourge as a weapon. Like, that race never appeared. It just felt like a huge missed opportunity. That would have been a really interesting storyline to me. Not the capuchin monkey aliens exalting people. To me, it just felt like such a letdown. And I know it's because BioWare just basically messed around for, what was it, like 8 years or something, and then they didn't get their act together or start working on anything cohesive for a year or two before the deadline from EA. When the first issues with this game came out, I was like, oh, this is classic EA. And then I read that breaking article on, what was it, Kotaku, about, it was BioWare, at least the BioWare that it had evolved into, just massively dropping the ball on this. And I feel like there's some storylines like that possible dark matter, dark forest theory, and like the benefactor stuff, fascinating, that just got completely dropped or forgotten about. Just so many threads left unfinished. Like that benefactor storyline was so interesting to me. And they set it up like there's this big reveal. Oh my gosh, there's like a secret person who is pulling the strings. Who is this? And my first thought, I think, and probably many people's first thoughts were, is it the Elusive Man? Was it the Shadow Broker? Was it, but it wasn't as human-centric as you'd think for it to be the Elusive Man. So maybe it was like Admiral Hackett or the Council? I don't know. I mean, it felt like there was a big ball drop there too. Because you learn all this devastating news about the Milky Way and the Reapers, and you're listening to these audio logs about basically your whole galaxy being destroyed, and your character's just like smiling blankly on the screen as this is revealed to them, and then nothing is ever said about it again. It's never brought up again. And your character doesn't even say anything. Your character's just like, well, and continues on like nothing happened. And that seems just crazy to me. Like, it just seems crazy to me. This could have been so much more interesting. Oh, and the loss of the Quarian arc too. Like, first of all, that shouldn't have been DLC. You should have been able to find all the arcs in the main game. But I don't need to rant about that any further. But there are things that this game does really well. The combat was fun, with the exception of the limitations of those three skill sets. All of the characters, all of your squad members are really well-rounded, and they have fun dialogue. I know some people hate on Liam. I actually like Liam's character. I like all of the characters with the exception of PB. I find PB incredibly annoying. And actually, I'm probably going to get some heat for saying this, but it's just my opinion, guys. And you can disagree with me if you want, but I actually find more of the team in this game engaging and likable than the original trilogy. I actually am not a huge fan of a lot of characters from the original trilogy. Like, everybody loves Jack. I don't like Jack. I find Jack incredibly irritating. And I empathize with her story and everything she's been through. And my shepherd always tries to befriend her, but I just don't like Jack as a character. And there are other characters that are incredibly popular that I also am not a fan of, like Tally. I know everybody loves Tally. And I don't really like Tally that much. And I don't know why. I think maybe it's the voice actor. Like, she did a good job, but I don't know. I can't really explain it. Like, I like Miranda a lot. I loved what they did with that character. I love Legion. I love Garrus. I love Thane. I love Samara. Like, I love most of the characters, but some of them I'm just not stoked about. Oh, and I hate Jacob. That's not an unpopular opinion. Everybody that plays Mass Effect just hates Jacob, I think. But yeah, I'm not big on Jack. I'm not big on Tally. And I also am not a fan of Liara. I feel like Liara is really kind of cast as sort of like a fragile or wishy-washy character in some ways. I feel like she could have been a stronger character. I don't know. I go back and forth on Liara. Maybe that has been influenced by, I've read some Mass Effect fan fiction, and she's always cast as like this weepy character in Mass Effect fan fiction. And then she's also, like, throughout the games, always throwing herself at Shepard. And I kind of get annoyed. Like, how many times do I need to tell Liara that I just want to be friends with Liara throughout this game? Like, take a hint and stop bothering my Shepard. Shepard's going to be dating Garrus this playthrough, Liara. Please leave me alone. So, there's just a couple characters that I have very unpopular opinions on. So I really do like the characters in Andromeda. I think they're all super fun, except for PB. I find PB super annoying. And also, she's not great combat-wise. So, I rarely ever use PB. The action gameplay is great. Changed up my tactics and how I play. So, I enjoyed replaying Andromeda. I definitely don't hold as much distaste in my head as I did the first time I played this game. I wish BioWare had not messed it up as badly as they did. And I am so glad that this has not ruined or forever tabled Mass Effect as a series. I can't wait to see what they do with the next game, although I'm very full of trepidation because for this one and for Dragon Age 4, because I'm just so concerned that they're going to mess it up horribly. And I think maybe this series, because it had such a strong foundation, could survive one bad game, which in this case was Andromeda. And again, in the grand scheme of games, Andromeda is not bad, but within the context of Mass Effect and how good the original trilogy was, Andromeda is bad. I think it can survive one bad game. I don't think it can survive another bad game. So the next Mass Effect needs to be, like, hit it out of the ballpark. Or I think that one of my favorite game series is going to be done for good, which is a real shame. So I'm really hoping that they pull their act together and they're able to produce something that's good. So I really enjoyed replaying both of these to my enduring love and fondness for Mass Effect Legendary and my surprise, not as bad as I remember re-experience of Andromeda. I enjoyed it. I think it was better than I remembered. And it was a fun thing to replay during the pandemic. I found myself revisiting a lot of familiar, sort of comforting things throughout the pandemic, and I think a lot of people did. So for me, this was a good revisit. And yeah, I endorse it for whatever that matters, whatever that counts. Let me know. I know this channel started gaining traction because I recorded a Star Wars rant, but I'm sure that some of you guys also love Mass Effect too. So if you do, and if you've played this, what are your thoughts on the Legendary Edition and on Andromeda? I'm very curious because I I try not to engage too much in public discourse because I know I have some unpopular opinions about some of the characters in Mass Effect, the original trilogy. So I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. So let me know. And thanks for tuning in. It's nice to be back and hearing from you guys again. I'm glad you all are hanging in there with everything that's going on. So stay safe, and I'll catch you later, Bacons.